When you think about history's greatest generals, names like Alexander the Great or Genghis Khan probably come to mind. But how many of them can actually claim to be undefeated? Well, today we're going to talk about a commander who, by all accounts, never lost a single battle. His name was Khalid ibn al-Walid.
Just imagine you're a military leader and you get this message from your opponent. That's exactly what Khalid sent to the mighty Persian Empire. It's so much more than just a threat. It's a statement of intent, and it's basically the opening shot in building this terrifying, legendary reputation.
So that's the big question, right? How on earth did he do it? How did one person pull off these impossible wins over and over again? We're going to dig into his tactics, his psychology, and the pure audacity behind his victories to try and figure out what made him seem so invincible.
But here's the crazy part. Before this sword was drawn for Islam, it was actually pointed against it. Get this. Khalid was a formidable opponent of the early Muslims at first. He only converted to Islam 3 months before he was thrown into what would become his first and maybe his most defining challenge as a Muslim commander.
And that first test? It was the Battle of Mu'tah. Now, this whole thing was supposed to be a straightforward mission to punish the murderers of a Muslim envoy. But it very quickly spiraled out of control and turned into this desperate, all-out fight for survival against a global superpower.
I mean, just look at these numbers. They are absolutely insane. On one side, you have a Muslim force of just 3,000. And on the other, a massive, combined Byzantine and Ghassanid army of 200,000. The odds weren't just bad, they were non-existent. This wasn't a battle. It was supposed to be a slaughter. And yet, for a whole week, this tiny army somehow managed to hold its ground. But man, the cost was just devastating. The Prophet Muhammad had appointed 3 commanders in sequence, and one by one, they all died in battle. First Zayd, then Ja'far, then Abdullah. Just like that, the army's leadership was completely wiped out. You can imagine, their morale was totally shattered.
So here's the situation. No leaders, facing total annihilation. And the banner gets passed to Khalid, this new convert. His first decision as a commander is, well, it's radical. He takes one look at the situation and knows winning is impossible. The new goal? Just get out alive.
Okay, so what he does next is pure genius. It's a masterclass in psychological warfare. First, he has his right and left flanks switch places. Then, he rotates the guys in the front with the guys in the back. So the next morning, the enemy looks across the field and sees all these new faces, new banners. They're thinking, whoa, where did this massive army come from? To really sell it, he sends a small group of cavalry to kick up dust behind a hill, making it look like a huge wave of reinforcements is arriving. Then, after a quick, sharp attack, Khalid gives the signal for this super slow, super orderly retreat. And the Byzantine commander, he falls for it hook, line, and sinker. He sees what he thinks are fresh troops. He sees the dust clouds, and this perfect, organized withdrawal convinces him it has to be a trap. He refuses to chase them. And just like that, Khalid walks the entire army away from certain death. So when the story of this incredible escape gets back to Medina, the Prophet Muhammad gives him this epic title, Saifullah, which means the sword of God. Think about that. He didn't even win the battle in the traditional sense. But what he did, saving an entire army from annihilation, was so brilliant, it earned him that legendary name. All right, so Khalid's next big test comes during the Ridda Wars, which were these really chaotic conflicts after the Prophet's death. He's sent to deal with the army of a man named Musaylama, who had declared himself a new prophet. And this sets the stage for the incredibly bloody Battle of Yamama. But right at the start of this battle, things go completely sideways for the Muslims. Musaylama's army was bigger, and they fought with this shocking ferocity that just shattered the Muslim front lines. The whole army just breaks and starts running. We're talking a full-on rout. I mean, this was an absolute disaster. The retreat was so bad that Musaylama's men pushed them all the way back to their own camp and were about to overrun the whole thing. It really, really looks like it was all over. But right there, in the middle of all that chaos, Khalid does something brilliant. It's not just about military tactics, it's pure psychology. He starts yelling and reorganizing the fleeing soldiers, but he groups them by their tribes and clans. All of a sudden, the fight wasn't just about survival, it was personal. It was about family pride and not wanting to bring shame on your kin. And that shame, that appeal to their honor, it lit a fire under them. They turned around and started fighting with this renewed ferocity.
So the tide completely turns. The enemy gets pushed back into this big walled garden, and they slam the gate shut, thinking they're safe. The Muslims are stuck outside. And that's when this one warrior, al-Bara ibn Malik, shouts what has to be one of the gutsiest things ever. He tells his friends to put him on a shield and literally throw him over the wall, by himself, into thousands of enemy soldiers.
And you won't believe it, but they actually do it. They hoist him up and just chuck him over the wall. He gets horribly wounded, of course, but he fights his way to the gate and manages to unbar it from the inside. The Muslim army floods in, and in the brutal fight that follows, the rebellion is completely crushed. That place would forever be known as the Garden of Death.
So, with Arabia now unified, the new state starts looking at the superpowers on its borders. Khalid gets sent to the front lines in Iraq to take on the mighty Sasanian Persian Empire. We're talking one of the most powerful and advanced armies in the world at the time. So at the Battle of Valasha, it's a familiar story for Khalid. He's completely outnumbered again. The Persian commander was super confident, setting up his huge army in a classic formation, expecting a simple head-on fight where his numbers would easily win. Little did he know, he was about to walk straight into a tactical masterpiece. The plan itself was just beautiful in its simplicity. Khalid had 2 units of cavalry behind some hills on either side of the battlefield. Then he attacked the Persian center and ordered his men to pretend to retreat. And as the Persians, getting way too confident, surged forward to crush them, wham! Khalid springs the trap. The hidden cavalry comes charging out and smashes into their rear, while his main force turns around and attacks from the front. The result? It was total, complete annihilation. The Persian army was trapped in a perfect pincer movement, getting attacked from every direction at once. Panic just took over, their whole command structure fell apart, and the entire army was basically erased from the battlefield. The goal here wasn't just to win, it was to make sure they could never fight again. So, okay, let's recap. We've seen a miraculous escape, a jaw-dropping comeback, and a tactical masterclass. A clear pattern is definitely emerging here, but what was his secret? What really made this guy unbeatable? Well, when you really look at it, his secret wasn't just one thing. It was this incredible mix of skills. He had this ice-cold calm when everything was falling apart. He was a master of psychology who could outthink his enemies and inspire his own men. He was a leader who could grab a broken army and rally it. And his tactics? The way he used speed, deception, and maneuver instead of just brute force, it was just completely ahead of its time. And that kind of leaves us with this one big question to think about. You know, we always praise generals for their big, flashy victories, like the ones at Yamama and Mulaja. But maybe Khalid's greatest moment, his true masterpiece, was at his very first battle, where victory wasn't even an option, and he used pure genius to save his men instead. And it makes you wonder, right? What's the real measure of a great general?